I'm going to start off by giving all praises to Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahushai, Ba'ashem, Rakal Kadash. I want to give double honors to my teachers, the apostles of Great Millstone, and peace and mercy to the elect, and the one-third of Yasharallah, who is Israel, known today as the Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans, who are the true Israelites of the Bible. Now, in this lesson, I want to go ahead and get into the parable of the Good Samaritan. This is recorded in Luke 10 and 30. And Yahushua answering said, a certain man went down from Jerusalem to Jericho, and fell among thieves, which stripped him of his raiment, and wounded him, and departed, leaving him half dead. And by chance there came down a certain priest that way, and when he saw him, he passed by on the other side. And likewise a Levite, when he was at the place, came and looked on him, and passed by on the other side. But a certain Samaritan, as he journeyed, came where he was, and when he saw him, he had compassion on him, and went to him, and bound up his wounds, pouring in oil and wine, and set him on his own beast, and brought him to an inn, and took care of him. And on the morrow, when he departed, he took out 2 pence, and gave them to the host, and said unto him, take care of him, and whatsoever thou spendest more, when I come again, I will repay thee. Which now of these 3 thinkest thou was neighbor unto him that fell among the thieves? And he said, he that showed mercy on him. Then said Yahushua unto him, go and do thou likewise. Now it came to pass, as they went, that he entered into a certain village, and a certain woman named Martha received him into her house. And she had a sister called Mary, which also sat at Yahushua's feet and heard his word. And Martha was cumbered about much serving, and came to him and said, Lord, doest thou not care that my sister hath let me to serve alone? Bid her therefore that she help me. And Yahushua answered and said unto her, Martha, Martha, thou art careful and troubled about many things, but one thing is needful, and Mary hath chosen that good part, which shall not be taken away from her. So that's the parable, and it actually goes twofold. It goes into the parable and also the actions that followed, but I'm going to break both of them down. So first of all, one thing that when I learned about this parable, it struck me even harder when I found out, what the term Samaritan meant. Now, Samaritan comes from the term Samaria, which was the northern part of Israel, or the northern kingdom. So the Latinos or Native Americans. So in this case, the parable reflects Yahushua gives two people here. One, the priest, who should be pious and holy, and second, a Levite, who is naturally by tribal right should be a holy person, because that's where the priests used to come from. The Levitical priests came from the tribe of Levi, who we know today as the Haitians. Now, at this time, the Samaritans, they were kind of known as the tribes that didn't have as well of a connection to the Lord, just because we had always gone off and started worshiping other gods. This is why we fell off first, and we were kicked out of Israel when in circa 700 BC, and we were led captive to Assyria, where we stayed for about 100 years, and then we came over here to the Americas. And this is recorded in 2nd Ezra 13 and 40. Now, So this right here refers to the lowliest of the tribes, or a person of the lowliest tribes, coming to help his neighbor, right? And another bit of clarification that I got was when I found out what the term neighbor meant, because a lot of people out there who try to say that the neighbor means anybody who, either if the person is pretty thick, and they think that neighbor literally means the person that lives right next to you. It doesn't refer to that. And because a lot of times people will go through and say, oh well, Mark, it tells you in Mark, or in this case Mark 12:31, it says, and the second is like, namely this, thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. There is none other commandment greater than these. Now, first of all, a lot of people get this wrong, because the churches out there, they don't teach context, even though they always pretend to want context, right? In this case here, Yahushua was speaking to the Israelites. He wasn't speaking, there was no Chinese, there was no Japanese, there were no Armenians, there were nobody else amongst this group that he was speaking to. He was speaking namely to the Israelites. In this particular time, he was speaking only to the southern tribe, with some scattering of some northern tribes within there. But namely, it was only the southern tribes that were still left in the land of Jerusalem during this time, as the northern tribes had already came over here. This is the northern tribes. They came over here after the Assyrian captivity during 722 to 605 BC is when it's recorded in 2 Kings 17 and 23. This is also where you get the story of Tobit from. Tobit he was in Assyria, and he ultimately went to Iran, but he was Argentinian. He was a Naphtali, so from the tribe of Naphtali, who are the so-called Argentinians of today. But like I was telling you, in 2nd Ezra 13:40, and we had come over here circa 700 BC. Around that time, we had gone around the Horn of Africa, and basically crossed over the Atlantic, which is why all the 10 tribes who are over here, they all have myths of coming from the east, right? Or the Aztecs call it Aslan, right? The land of the rising sun. Now, back to proving that the neighbors referred to here is not referring to just anybody who is surrounding you, but is an actual fellow Israelite. You have to go to Leviticus 19, and there's basically two parts. I'm just gonna get both parts, but this is Leviticus 19 and 1. And the Lord Yahweh Bahashem Yahushai spake unto Moses, saying, speak unto all the congregation of the children of Israel. So this is the Lord instructing Moses to tell this to the Israelites, the Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans. Let me just kind of get down here to verse 7, skip down to 17 and get to the point. Thou shalt not hate thy brother in thine heart. Thou shalt in any wise rebuke thy neighbor, and not suffer sin upon him. So the neighbor referred to by the Lord, and later on by the Messiah, wasn't just any random Gentile who are made up of all the 17 other nations of the world. It was talking about the Israelites, your fellow Israelites. So, back to the parable. So, these three men, also including the Samaritan, they were all Israelites. They don't tell you who the priest was from, but more likely the priest was from the tribe of Levi, since that's where the priest usually came from. Now, besides this, this is a story here that tells you that, it gives you some examples of how we should treat each other, right? We shouldn't have hatred for each other. We should come together, and this goes again for the Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans. We're not separate people. We're one people, right? And if you go to other nations, you see them doing this, right? The Chinese, they stick together. They have community commerce, right? They all help each other. This is why the people that work at their shops are always Chinese. Same thing with the Edomites, the so-called Caucasians. They stick together, right? They go to different countries. They huddle together, right? And it's funny because when you go to other countries and you'll see a Hispanic, a Negro, and I bet you if there was some Indians, Native American Indians there, we probably would huddle together. We would be able to vibe together, right? But every time I've gone and traveled, I always see Jake is always hanging out with themselves, or they hang out with Esau, because again, Esau is our brother, through the womb, that is, even though he broke that brotherly covenant. But besides this parable that shows us how we should treat each other, also down here it kind of gives you an idea of another breakdown or another parable, how the Lord basically told Martha, even though she's busy with what she feels is important to her, right? The daily life, hustle and bustle, while she's getting occupied in that, which I guess you could call it today what we know as the rat race. The Lord here said, he's all, but one thing is needful, and Mary hath chosen that good part, right? He basically told Martha, saying, you know what, so you go ahead and you keep, running in your circles. Martha is actually, she made the right choice, and she's actually listening to the part that actually matters, the good part. So hopefully this was a good breakdown of the parable of the Good Samaritan, and that you, Akim, were edified. So until next time, Akim, Shalom.